Um, Hi, good
Hi.
afternoon, Dr. O.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to conduct this video brief with the collaboration of AMCD and AADA.
Mhm.
We really greatly appreciate your time and your commitment
Mhm.
in this collaboration.
Oh, oh, no problem. Pleasure is mine.
So I want to ask you a couple of questions regarding multiculturalism and social justice and how you incorporate that
Mhm.
in your work. Um, so my first question is, can you please describe for us the value of multiculturalism in the work you do?
Yes, I definitely. I would say it is a really central role and central value in the work, in the all the work I do, including research, teaching, and counseling. So I'm the one that actually I'm the international scholar. I came from the who came from the different country. So I think multiculturalism is always there from the my start of my journey, professional journey, and all the work I do, like I say, including teaching and research and counseling or even supervision, is always multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is always played a central role in that work, meaning that I always try to be open to the different cultural background from my client, my students, and my researcher colleague to just appreciate all the different perspectives so that I can have a more clear and more whole picture of what is going on in our society, in our section, in our classroom. So certainly multiculturalism is all about, I think I would say it's about everything in my work. Yeah.
Yeah, when you were talking, I was like, wow, that just sounds like it's just, you just do it and you don't think about it. Like it's just so ingrained in what you do that it's not anything that's separate. It's like
Yeah.
it's what I do. It's in
Yes.
every aspect of all my roles. It's part of who I am as an educator, a researcher, a supervisor, and everything. So that's what it sounds like. So
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, it's like a
so it's
breath.
kind
It's
of
like an air. Yes, I breathe. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's how when you were talking, I was like, yeah, it sounds it's in my work. Like of course it's of course it's in my work. It's what I do. So
Yep.
thank you for that perspective.
Hmm.
I really appreciate like hearing that because it's like yes, it's not anything separate or add on, which is something a conversation that I had with another presenter about. Multicultural social justice work can sometimes seem like it's this add on component, but
Right.
what you're articulating is that it's in everything I do, like
Yep.
everything that I
Yes.
do.
Yes, exactly. It's a really central to my work, and the other things that I can just add to my multiculturalism philosophy. So it
Hmm.
is, yeah, it's definitely central role of my work, or the work
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Um, Kind of digging more into that. So, what role does social justice play
Mhm.
in your work?
Yeah, I think I know, as you probably know, that the social justice perspective has been recently more emphasized and more integrated into our multicultural competency model and multicultural movement in the field of counseling, which is I really appreciate it because I think sometimes we overlook the importance of social justice perspective for client and our students as well, because there is a systemic discrimination or system inequality that makes some difference, make their starting point really different, right? So as counselor and counselor educator, I think it is absolutely important to address those social justice issues to help our client and students reach their maximum like a performance or maximum life. So I think social justice is really like a I think social justice was like a missing piece in the work that I did before, because I was wondering, oh, okay, there's a lot of things that we can do within the section, but what about something that outside of the section or outside of our class, right? There's a lot of systemic inequality that prevent our students or our client from being thrive, and that's not their fault. It is our fault, and I think it's like a collective failure, right? So we are the one who created the system and maybe the perpetuated that system. So, and we can be the one who break that the vicious circle of the injustice system. So I think social justice is one of my central value in my work. And actually those kind of this social justice is one of the things I have recently focused in my research as well. So I think, yeah, social justice is really go hands in hand in multiculturalism. So I think that's my not clear answer, I think.
No, it makes sense because you talked about multicultural as a foundation, and being open and aware, and affirming of different cultural groups, and social justice is taking it a step further from what you were saying. And okay, based on some of these various cultural identities and the intersection of cultural identities, what are some of these barriers and challenges that are preventing my students, my clients, my supervisees from being their authentic selves? So, and I think you said it perfectly about it's more than outside of the classroom and outside of the session. And I think so many times in some of our curriculum, we focus on the session, what goes in a session and what to do in session. And sometimes, depending on the setting that we're in, we don't think about, some of the outside, the ecological systems that are intersecting with our client and the various systems that they're in.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I was thinking about was like school counselors. Like, I think school counselors, they do work in multiple systems, because they have to interact with parents, administrators, community. So I think again, I think it depends on settings, how much those different systems and how that's impacting our clients.
Exactly.
It varies across some of the specialties within the profession. So
exactly.
I think I got it, and I think that's what I grasped as far as like the role of social justice in your work.
Thank you so much. That's like a perfect summarization of what I said. And I really appreciate you talking about the school counselor, because I had a really great opportunity. I was lucky enough to work with some of the school counselor and school counselor educator during my PhD program and during my master program here in the United States. And I also, what I realized was that, like you say, school counselors are really in unique position to work with a lot of different persons, like parents, students, and their teachers and their personal or administrators. And I had like one research project to interview, do the qualitative study with the school counselor to see for what kind of things that they want to see in their school counseling school system. And they say that, yeah, we have a lot of responsibility to support our students in a variety of ways, but we feel like there's not much support for us, not much systemic support for us. So I think one thing I want to add into this conversation is that social justice is not only important for our students, our clients, but also for ourselves to best support our clients and students. So I think that's a really perfect example that you brought up, the school counselor. Yeah.
Yes, I do think sometimes we do focus on the individuals we provide services to and making sure advocating, but what about resources and support for ourselves so that we can effectively provide service? So it's like, a trickle down effect. Like, we need the support and the resources so that we can also provide the resources and support for our clients and for our students. So thank you for adding that point.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
My next question is, why is it important to consider lifespan development when working with clients?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think I would say that lifespan development, right, which is, in other words, where they are in their lives, play a really important role in how they see themselves and how they see the relationship and how they see the world, right? So its developmental piece is always played a great role in terms of their mental maturity or their identity development and everything. So I always tell my students to just do not underestimate the important role of their developmental level, their developmental place, because everyone is different. Because everyone is where they are looks really different to the other people. And same goes for the classroom as well, because some students maybe can understand what I say right away, but some students do not, because not because they do not have like the same ability to understand the class content, because just because it is a different where they are in terms of developmental level, right? So I think based on their developmental level, I always adjust the way that I provide my feedback. Some students need some like a very concrete, specific feedback, but other they may need some encouragement. So depending where they are, and same goes for the client. As you already know, the client look very different, and same advice may not work for the other client because that's where they are. So yes, a lifespan development is such a really important role in the clinical counseling section and classroom as well, and supervision or in the research as well, because that's really played one of the important role in how we perceive the relationship and the world and ourselves, which is all about counseling, right? So,
yeah. Thank you. I agree with you completely that it is, at different life points, people's development is very different. So like you were talking about in your example, as far as like, we have a wide range of students that are in our classrooms, and developmentally, some people, like you said, need more very structured, concrete, specific feedback because of their developmental level. Other, need more encouragement and feedback. And I mean, I'm speaking about conversations that I just had with some of my students yesterday with, they have, middle, older adult clients. Their needs are very different than, people who are in their 30s, late 20s. So we had to have a conversation about, maybe you need to go back to some of your human growth and development or lifespan textbooks and get a better sense of what are some of the presenting concerns that typically happen around this age. Look back at various developmental theories, but also making sure that you're incorporating the uniqueness of their cultural identities in that. But it does give you some type of an understanding of, some of the presenting needs of older adults during this time. I was like, they could be adjusting with retirement. They may be retired and trying to start a job. Like, it's all these other things. There could be accessibility issues that they're struggling with, autonomy. Say they're not able to get, around as much as they used to. So they're struggling with feeling as though they have to give up some of their independence. I was like, I don't know if this is pertinent to your particular client, but these are just some of the examples of some of the things that older adults may present to counselor with or could be struggling with. So I was like, you have to go back and think about that, because those issues and concerns may not be the issues and concerns of
for other people,
middle age, 20, 30-year-old clients. So I like how you kind of talked about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And which is really aligned with the multiculturalism again, right? So multiculturalism is all about being open to the different perspective and different development stage where our content may be. So I think if you really believer for multiculturalism and social justice, and I think there's no way for you to avoid or just ignore the important role of the lifespan development.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you. So my final question is, what are some concrete examples, about 2 to 3, that demonstrate how you incorporate multiculturalism and social justice across the lifespan development as a professional counselor, educator, supervisor, and researcher? And you did touch on some when you talked about your work with clients. So I didn't know if your work with students as far as the feedback. I didn't know if you had any more examples that you also wanted to share with us.
Yeah, of course. I have like maybe 1 or 2 more examples to share. Like in terms of research, I think my colleagues and I recently submitted a manuscript about interaction. I think manuscript about the impact of COVID-19 related racism on mental health of Asian American and Asian American living in the United States. And we also factor in the role of the age and gender, the interaction effect of the gender and age. in that experience of impact of the COVID-19 related racism on their mental health. So that's kind of like what I'm doing in terms of the social justice and multiculturalism from the lifespan perspective, because what we found was that like the older people are more likely have much more worse impact by the COVID-19 related racism than the younger generation. So because that's kind of like a counterintuitive, or this kind of like an opposite to what we hypothesized, because in general, we thought that we hypothesized that like as you get older, you are more mature, you have more like a better healthy coping strategy. So maybe you have more resource to protect yourself from the being affected or being impacted by the racism or COVID-19 related racism. However, the result is kind of opposite. So we kind of talk about what might happen in there. Maybe I always believe that getting age is does not necessarily getting older. It doesn't necessarily mean that you get mature automatically. To me, just the getting older is just give you more opportunity to get mature. But it is up to you whether you can use the opportunity to mature or to just regress back to your childhood. So maybe that's what happened in our research. But my point is that's kind of like one of a good example that how I incorporated social justice and multiculturalism and lifespan development into my research. And those kind of research line I have been focusing on these days. And I have a couple other projects coming up about those things, like COVID-19 racism and their developmental level and their life, where they are and their gender and their racial identity, how those all things intersect together to impact their mental health. So that's one of the examples that I incorporated those things in my research. I think a classroom, I think I already talked about a little bit, because I always start my class saying that, hey, my name is Seungbin, and as you know that I have really strong English accent because English is not my first language because I'm international scholar. I've been here in the United States almost like 10 years, but English is not my first language. So sometimes whenever I'm anxious, my accents get stronger. So please let me know if you don't understand what I'm saying. I can repeat what I say 100 times if you want. Maybe you don't want. But that's how I start my classroom always, every single semester, which is really kind of intentional because I want to be their good model for how to create a safe environment in classroom. And that behavior hopefully can transfer to their counseling section. They can expose themselves a little bit in a good way so that your client feels safer and more, they have more trust with you so that they can safely explore their identity or their whatever presenting issue that they have. So I think that that's kind of like one of my just a little technique, if you say, the technique that I always use to incorporate multiculturalism into my classroom. So I think that's a good example, I think, but I'm not sure that makes sense to you.
Yeah, that makes like perfect sense, because I know like for me, when you were talking about the classroom example, I was born and raised in the South, but I've lived in California and Midwest, and sometimes I don't recognize it, but sometimes I've been told by students or colleagues, and they'll be like, whoa, that was really Southern. I didn't get what you said, or something like that. So it like comes out sometimes when I don't know it. So I tell students that, hey, if my Southern drawl is a little bit too much, let me know, or anything like that, because sometimes it comes out because I haven't lived it back in the South, but I mean, once I left, come back to visit, but it's been a while. And then of course I've lived out in California, and then now I live Midwest. So it's kind of a mixture as well. But I think it's important with what you're talking about is that you talk about creating that space of transparency, and also how you create that and implement that strategy so that they in their sessions do the same thing, or model that behavior that we are culturally different. This is And, you know,
Yeah,
so
and
yeah, so
it is okay to be different. And also, what I realized was that like I teach a multicultural counseling course in my college, which is one
mhm,
of my favorite, not one of the most favorite class that I teach, and that's
yeah,
my area. So I love to teach, and I love to teach that class forever if the college allowed me to. But what I
yeah,
realized was that whenever I teach that class, as you already know, that especially in the East Coast, in the multicultural class, and in general in our graduate program, a lot of students is white. Yes,
yes,
and I have I have one or two students coming from the racial minority groups. It's a one or two, and but majority of the students in my multicultural class is white or are white. So what I realized was whenever I teach that class, the white students are really afraid to say something because they
yeah,
do not want to say something that just that offend me or offend their colleague or their friend of the
yes,
color. So I think that's why just I that's the where I start to just start my class with those self disclosure, because like, hey, you don't have to worry about offend me by just mispronouncing my first name, because my first name is really, I mean, to be honest with you, just my first name is really hard for me to just pronounce in English for myself.
I'm
So
sure, right?
yeah, yeah, right. So I think you don't have to worry that, because they really afraid to say my first name because they do not want to mispronounce my first name, and they do not want to be like accused of racist. So I just try to just break down that word in the beginning
Mhm,
of the class, and then that worked really well so far for me. And they just openly talk about how they perceive the racism, and why it's so difficult for them to realize the racism, because that racism doesn't track them per
yeah,
se. So I think that
mhm,
those kind of conversations that I want to see, because sometimes in multicultural counseling class could go like a really empty class per se, like they just say whatever they know how to play the game, like
yes,
they know what to say, what shouldn't say. But I don't want to have that conversation. It doesn't work in the classroom. In the classroom, in the safe room, so you can say whatever you want to say. Let's have talk about it, right? So
yeah.
I think that's one thing just I want to add. That just came up to my mind.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great
Yeah.
point to add, because I think when we talk about issues as far as like privilege, oppression,
Right.
and the isms, you know, specifically racism, because it's so inherent in the culture of the United States. That's
Right.
kind of how it was built and designed, this
Right.
system. And and there's some benefit to it,
Right.
but it's not necessarily like them. It's just what they know, and or in
Right.
order to kind of move forward and be anti-racist is to have those very honest conversations and being
Exactly.
open to that, being open and hearing about the experience and not minimizing non-white individuals'
Right.
experiences,
Right.
you know, to that too. So the only way is to engage in these open, honest
Right.
conversations, and just being open to hearing and not being dismissive of
Exactly.
that. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Exactly.
thank you, for adding that point.
No problem.
Well, that was the last of my questions. I
Hmm.
really appreciate you taking a few minutes to speak with me, Dr. O, about multiculturalism and social justice in your work. I
Hmm.
greatly appreciate, and thank you for your insight. It was really great getting to know your role and how you work. So thank you for
Hmm.
your time.
Thank you so much. I'm really thankful for being part of this great project. So thank you so much for invitation.
All right. Thank you. Well, you have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.